Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik, Mr. Neil Wilson, Mr. Raghupathy, Sujit, ladies and gentlemen, we are inaugurating a very important meeting of the minds today. Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik has left us with some questions which he hopes we would be applying our minds to in this conference. One, what are the requirements of end-user industries for IT and IT solutions? How are these end-user industries evolving? What is the role of the IT industry in tapping into this need? And what is the role of government in bringing about a transformation using IT in these industries? 4 questions that he has laid out. End-user industries, you would be addressing the manufacturing industries and infrastructure, a broad set of industries there. I'm going to focus on the manufacturing industries, which Mr. Pramanik highlighted. We are counting on in this country a lot for the future viability of our society and our country. We need jobs, jobs, and jobs. And the manufacturing industry has barely played its role in the creation of adequate number of jobs for the people of this country. The manufacturing industry should be the source for the goods and even services that people in this country need, and be able to export much more than we have been doing, and thus making our international trade more balanced than it is today. So the manufacturing industry is what I'm going to focus on very much in answering those questions. What are the requirements of manufacturing industries? How are they evolving, these industries? And what's the role of IT and the role of government in facilitating the transformation? I want to begin with a small story. Firstly, to confirm to you that I don't know IT as much as the experts, as many of you here do know. But I do know something about manufacturing and the manufacturing industries. In 1982, Japan allowed senior people from across the world by choice to come and visit with the leaders of Japanese industries, to have some heart-to-heart discussions with them about how Japan had, within 15 years prior to that, started knocking off competitors all over the world, in the auto industry, in the white goods industry, in infrastructure industries, all over the world. And naturally the world, Americans, Europeans, some of us from India were very curious about what had transformed Japan, its manufacturing industries. And this was a meeting at the Toyota headquarters, where after a visit to the Toyota factory, where we saw the much touted Kanban system in operation, which we'd read about in books, but actually to go and see what it was and how it operated was a gift that the Japanese were providing to some of us. And then followed with a discussion with the head of industrial engineering of Toyota about the Toyota production system. And in that, we were all already informed before we went to Japan that in Japan, the quality levels are so high, cost levels are very, very low, even though quality is much higher than elsewhere, that on-time delivery is the best in the world, even though the inventories are the lowest in the world. So there were dilemmas here. How can quality be so high when cost is so low? How can on-time delivery be so good when inventories are so low? So in that discussion, an American head of an American company stood up and asked, he said, I would like to know, since you're managing so much information to produce these outstanding results, what are the computer systems that you are using to manage your production? Translated into Japanese, and the answer came, we are not using any computer systems to manage production on the shop floor. So he asked the question yet again, and can you give us the form, he said, in which the information is captured to put into the computer system, because then you know what is the relevant data. And the Japanese man said, but that form is already given to you in your folder. And in our folder was a Kanban card, and we know what a Kanban card is, a simple part number and some quantity, and that's it, and it moves. So he got up, this American gentleman, and he looked at it, and he said quite loudly, the Japanese didn't speak English, we all did, the 30 of us, and he said, these Japanese, they never tell you the truth, do they? Now we, some of us, had realized the real truth, that this process was functioning not because of elaborate manipulation of masses of data, but by understanding what the essence of the process is. So I want to talk to you about the essence of processes in manufacturing. And you can, as IT people, then figure out, those of you who are IT chiefs, as most of you are here, figure out how you could make a more vibrant, effective manufacturing system in India. Another image I want to give you is Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. Some of you, well, I know some are very young and may not recollect the movie, but it's a great movie, so do see it even now. And you might remember Modern Times, about this worker on the line, and the line keeps moving, and he just has to keep pace with the line. And that is Charlie Chaplin's spoof about a mass production system, where things must be on scale and every part of it must function as intended, and then the mass production system is highly efficient. So let's stick with the auto industry, an industry that I know, and I talked about Toyota. The auto companies of the United States in the early part of the 20th century made custom cars. Every car was made by craftsmen, and there you had your car. I mean, they looked similar to each other, but each was a custom-made car. And then came into batch production with some standardization of parts and so, and then Henry Ford's genius about standard parts with standard tools, and you got the mass production line. Well, what's happening since then, and which Toyota came into it, that they were managing a mass production system in which a greater variety of products could be produced on the same line. And you could shift models during the course of production, on the day even, and thus, as we said, the variety of things that was produced, all delivered on time, with low inventories also. So we are shifting now from the design of the product to the design of the process, which enables this remarkable outcomes. When I worked in the auto industry with Tata Telco, Tata Motors now, we were in that point in the early 1980s, at the time that I talked about the visit to Japan, is what should be our process strategy, our technology strategy. Recognizing that we are a very small company and they are much, much bigger, well-endowed companies, we would not be able to get a large enough market to load even a small plant if we did not produce a variety. But to produce a variety, as we said, there are challenges in designing your process. And what advantage can we take of technology in managing the process? The Toyota genius was in the process to put in the capability in people to do a single minute exchange of die, as they said, that you could change a die in a minute, and the first part produced with the die change would be accurate. And for that you required no variance in the process. By the time we were in the 80s, NC machines were coming about, and we said an NC machine provides you, with the use of technology, the ability to have no variance and a single second exchange, or single minute exchange, and so. So why don't we use technology, which is suiting the process architecture that we must have for our business strategy? But of course, it's expensive. It's more expensive to have a CNC machine to do this than to have no machines as Toyota, technology as Toyota had. So they come to the economy of scale and the economy of scope. And if you do the calculations as we did, you project them over time, by using a more expensive process, which is fully loaded because you can keep producing every day what is required and also change models as the market changes, you actually get more returns on a more expensive investment than you would get if you had saved on the investment. And so we said that shall be our strategy. We shall use technology to get more scope capabilities at a small scale. With this, I shift to a third story, Mahatma Gandhi. And you're going to wonder, this guy talks about Toyota, then he talks about Charlie Chaplin, and now he's talking about Mahatma Gandhi. Well, Mahatma Gandhi went to Lancaster in the late, it was before the independence of India, of course. And he went to see why the UK mills had taken over India's textile industry. And he'd heard about the big looms and the automation and the technology. And he was very keen that, people should be producing themselves so they earn themselves, like in India. But they were now deprived of manufacturing possibilities in the country. So there he saw, in the mills in Lancaster, lots of machines all crammed together in one factory. It was noisy, hot, people were sweaty, even though it was England. And Mahatma Gandhi asked the question, he said, why do you have to stuff all these machines into one factory? Why couldn't you disperse these machines so that they'd all have fresh air and the people working on them would have fresh air? And the man thought about it and he said, well, you see, these machines are run by power. He said, yes. And so, you see, when we had first put in these machines, got this idea of this machine production, the power was supplied by steam. And a steam boiler can't deliver steam over long distances. So we had to put all the machines in one place. And so Gandhi asked, he said, but now they are being powered by electricity. Electricity can be transported long distances. So why don't you change your concept of the factory? A factory doesn't have to be congested things in one place. A factory could be many producing people and machines all over the place who are connected together as an enterprise. See. So some of us began to think about it. Why is it in the history of manufacturing development that when Mahatma Gandhi asked this question and asked it to J.R.D. Tata and Ghanshyam Birla, till 10 years ago, maybe, there was no answer to. But the answer was back in Charlie Chaplin. You want to control everything, and you want it in your line of sight. Remember the movie Modern Times? On his computer screen, he's watching this guy that he's goofing, and he sends someone down to bang him and say, you keep at it. So he said, okay. When Mahatma Gandhi talked of electricity, there was no telecommunications and computer technologies, but now they are. So why can't we design an enterprise where production units are all dispersed and you can meet your requirements through technology to keep the enterprise functioning and humming together? So I want to leave this thought with you. Because in our country, we need small enterprises to grow. All over the world, actually, the manufacturing industry's backbone is small enterprises. And we in our country recognize this also. So it's not a matter of Mahatma Gandhi or people saying small is beautiful. It's in the structure of manufacturing, the large sector, that the small are the ones that feed the bigger, and then the bigger take from the just smaller, and you get big industries. So unless we have a healthy ecosystem of small enterprises in this country, we will not grow our manufacturing sector to create the jobs of 100 million that we're talking about. And do remember, the big units on the top do not create themselves many jobs. Unless there's an ecosystem behind which is healthy and growing, you're not going to get your 100 million jobs. So please focus on the requirements on the small sector. That's message number one. All right. Now the small sector, and let's switch to technology in manufacturing. One is very clearly the products today, and I could see Bhaskar and others using very smart things. How much technology is in this versus material? When you talk about the product cost of this, I mean, hardly this much is material done on machines. The rest of it is technology costs in that. So products today have a lot of technology. Secondly, today, processes certainly have a lot of technology. We've shifted from the time of Toyota. Even Toyota is using a lot of technology to manage its manufacturing, its design and manufacturing processes. So introducing use of technology into processes of our small industries and the large ones too. And thirdly, into the architecture and the management of the network. And that's, for India, the key. Our small industries find it difficult to get resources, financial resources, access to markets, supply resources, technology resources. They have been, by and large, ignored. because it's difficult to sell to so many small units. The cost is far better to get, Shibu, a $1 billion contract with some gadi in America. The cost of sale is much less than to sell to 1,000 units in India. So how do we help the small units to be able to access technology in ways that we also make money as technology companies, and they find it possible and cost-effective to use that technology? So that is the models that are emerging about cloud computing, about better clusters of small industries who build in themselves the common capabilities that all units may need, and each one doesn't have to have that capability themselves. So that's the second thought I would leave with you, is as innovators from the technology side, because the question Bhaskar asked was, well, what's the role of the technology industry? And I'm mentioning to you too, for your strategies. Then we come down to government, the role of government. Manufacturing is not growing in the country. We want to get it to grow at 14% per annum, we say, when the economy is growing at 4.5% or 5%. In any case, the point is manufacturing better go 3 or 4% faster than the rate of growth of the economy if the share of manufacturing into GDP is to increase. So what are the bottlenecks that are coming in the way of manufacturing enterprises in this country growing? And I'm going to mention 3. The first one might surprise you, or it may be not, is to do with our attitude towards human beings in our enterprises. A manufacturing enterprise must be competitive. It starts from where it is, and it must very rapidly become more competitive than people it was not able to compete with before. That was Japan's genius. When they started that EQM movement, they were not the most competitive or acceptable industry, manufacturing industry of the world. But within 10 or 15 years, they were the masters of the domain. So they learned much faster, and they improved much faster than all other countries' manufacturing enterprises did. So we come to manufacturing enterprises must be rapid learning enterprises. And before I tell you the punchline, Toyota was, as I said, the master of manufacturing processes. In 1993-94, I did a survey, and here you did a survey about IT and so, and we in Arthur D. Little did a survey about what's, along with economists, what's changing in terms of architectures of manufacturing processes and enterprises. And naturally, we got permission with the economists to visit and talk to industrial engineering chiefs and the CEOs of Toyota. And what they told us, again, surprised us. But by that time, Japan was automating because there weren't enough people. So the RAV4, the Toyota RAV4, the first plant for that was a completely automated plant. Because they had mastered the process. Now they could put the process into a machine, and that's what it was. But what they said was they were taking out some of the machines and robots and putting people back at critical points. Because they said the only mind that is able to sense that something needs to change and make out hypotheses of what needs to change is the human mind. So unless we put enough, like the jewels in a watch, human minds into this machine, we will not be a faster learning enterprise. So the heart of the manufacturing enterprise, especially if you want to become more competitive, is the human asset. It's the only appreciating asset in the manufacturing enterprise and in any enterprise. It's an asset that can increase its own value. Its own can do so. The machine's value and capability is improved by the people, as Toyota said, and the buildings, I don't know how you improve it, but utilization of buildings and space, so the human mind. So we, into our strategy to grow manufacturing, must treat the human being as not a cost and flexibility to fire them or hire them to suit our demand situation, but that's the resource that's going to make our country's manufacturing enterprise the best. And by the way, we must employ 100 million of them anyway. So just the ability to fire them easily is not going to be producing the outcomes we want. So that's the first task that government has and CII has, and CII is being a great support in re-educating ourselves as leaders in CII about what our relationship should be to the people who work in our enterprises. Second is SMEs. To access SMEs, or for SMEs to access resources, they need to be in clusters. And those clusters must be effectively managed clusters. We've noticed that. Elsewhere in the world, they use clusters for SMEs because that's the only logical business architecture to enable clusters to get the benefit of scale, though they are individually small. The quality of the management of the cluster is the variable. If the cluster manages itself as a unified association, creates common resources which people can fairly share, is able to negotiate with people outside for the needs of the members of the cluster, then every unit in the cluster benefits. And Indians aren't very good at cooperatively working and managing common assets, whereas the Japanese, the people in the United States and all over Europe through the OECD are very good at this. And we are therefore introducing a course in better cluster management. We'd like to have certified cluster managers and people who manage associations to run high-quality associations. And with that, Bhaskar, may I, with Sujit, who's been around since the 90s with CII, also say, I think CII also should become a more effective association. And there are benchmarks you could compare. Are you really, in terms of your processes, an effective association compared with the associations in other countries with whom we are competing? The third is the ease of doing business, which is mentioned in your report. I had a peek preview of it, that it's the biggest obstacle perhaps. Now, the ease of doing business requires action on two fronts. One, we normally jump to saying the laws, the labor laws, the environmental laws. But actually, all the surveys that have been done by the World Bank and by us in India, the biggest opportunity is in simplifying the processes and using IT in the processes for giving the permissions and whatever data that you want out of the enterprises. So don't worry about the political problem about changing the laws. Yes? We found that 3/4 of the opportunity lies in just streamlining the process. And by the way, 2/3 of the business regulations that affect enterprises are regulations made by the states, and the remaining 1/3 that are made by the center are also administered by the states. So your focus has to be to get to the states along with industry and manufacturing industry and say, how can we work together, the state, industry, and yourselves from IT, in streamlining the regulation, administration processes. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'm leaving you with, if you're mostly IT people, and I know the leader here is Shibu, I'm glad I could say this to you, and Bhaskar yourself. I really feel that the Indian IT industry now needs to help us, needs to help our SMEs, needs to help us. And three things. Focus on the SMEs, like I said. Focus very much on the regulations and putting technology into regulations in the business. And third is innovations to do with the design of networks of enterprises and what role technology can play is Mahatma Gandhi's question. Thank you very much, and I wish the very best to your seminar. We look forward to it.